what I'm most passionate about and why I'm in this business and I hope to stay in this business is if we do our jobs, people have jobs.
Okay, everybody, welcome to the Destination Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Stoker, along with my co-host, Jordan Barker.
Hello.
And Jordan has a very green shirt on today. I just wanted everybody to know.
You're dang right I do. It's bold. I like
It's
it.
bold.
You like
It's
it?
very-
Are you dissing my green shirt?
I mean, it's not bad, you know.
But it's not good. I get it.
It's somewhere in
Message
between.
received.
Yeah,
Message received. Well, hey, I like it, and that's all that matters.
Well, we and you know, it's a beautiful shirt.
Thank
Jordan.
you.
It's
I
very
appreciate
beautiful.
that. I feel like you don't mean it, but thank you.
We have a special guest today that we probably should have just gone right to instead of me talking about Jordan's shirt. But we have Brook Kaufman from the Casper, Wyoming Tourism Office. And Brook is going to have some interesting insights for us today. We're excited to have her on board. And Brook, welcome to the program.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. I'm super stoked to be here.
Awesome. We're excited to have you. You know, we've got kind of a little kickoff question that we just ask everybody that comes on the podcast before we dive into you, your role, and kind of why we're here. Tell us a little bit about your dream destination. We like to hear where everybody would dream to go if money weren't an issue or whatever.
Well, I think the only answer I can give you is Casper, Wyoming.
Nice.
Right. No.
I like it.
Yep.
So I got a couple places on my mind right now, which is interesting. So I've been looking at where are good places to travel that are safe as a single person. So that's kind of driving some of the things I'm going to say to you. But two destinations on my mind. One is Bali and one is Argentina. So spend 2 weeks, one in the country and on a bicycle and touring wineries, and then the other half in Buenos Aires and live in that urban, cool cultural thing for a week. So those are the two that are kind of on my radar. I would really love to go.
Sounds amazing. That sounds amazing. What about somewhere that you've actually been? Is there a place that's at the top that you've...
Other than Casper,
Wyoming.
We'll
Yeah, good clarification. Yeah. Other than Casper, Wyoming, is there a place, like a destination, that is your favorite spot to travel to?
Yes. So you're going to love this story. So I'll make it quick. I lived in Costa Rica in 2006. And when you go as an American, you have to have your passport stamped. You have to leave the country and have it stamped every 90 days. So the group I was with, we actually spent a weekend in Granada, Nicaragua. And it was stunning. I mean, honestly, right now, out of all the places I've traveled and been, for sure, that would be my favorite. So Granada, Nicaragua.
Okay, duly noted. I need to put that on the list. I don't have that on the list right now.
It's a unique destination. One of the things I'll just share quickly is so when you rent homes, a lot of the homes have interior courtyards. So they're all open to the elements. So the sky is open and you've got a whole house that's contained, but on the inside, it's just open to a swimming pool or it's open to the sun and a big garden. I had never seen anything like it. So I can't tell you if it's the architecture I loved or if it was the city or both, but I would put it on your list if it's not.
Okay. All right. Consider it done. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. That's a good intro. I think we'd love to just give our listeners a basic understanding of who they're listening to. Brook, tell me a little bit about you, your background, and how you ended up in tourism.
Okay. Well, I think everybody that you interview that's in tourism will tell you they probably tripped into tourism. So when I was going to college, tourism, like going to run a bureau, wasn't really a thing anybody talked about. So my background is marketing. So I got my bachelor's degree in marketing, got a master's degree in business, spent a lot of the first part of my career in marketing roles, but there's a lot that changes and it's just at such an accelerated pace now that it's a lot to keep up with. And I think there's some of us in the older guard that think, I'm so glad that there's people around us who can be good at that now because it's kind of hard to follow and keep up. So thank goodness there's agencies and younger people coming up who have the energy and the desire to kind of follow where the trends are. So tourism, what I'm most passionate about and why I'm in this business and I hope to stay in this business is if we do our jobs, people have jobs. And and especially in our economy, it's very cyclical and it's tied to energy. And I think tourism is a really strong backfill in our economy, especially when energy is down. But I also know that when we're bringing conventions or sporting events or business to my community, it's employing people. And that's what gets me out of bed every day. And there's always more to do. But I just feel like we're actually in an industry that's a mechanism to drive growth and positive things in our community, quality of life, all of that. So that's my interest in tourism. That's why I hope to stay in tourism.
I like that. That's an interesting perspective. When you mentioned, if we do our jobs, people have jobs. I really like that. I think a lot of times people think about tourism marketing And tourism in general and it obviously is a very fun thing, but I think there's also a certain
responsibility
and weight that goes along with that, right? Where it's like, if you don't do your job to the best of your abilities, it really impacts people at a personal level. So I really, really like that. Along those lines, can you speak to your role specifically at the tourism office? What is it that you oversee? What is your kind of role and responsibilities entail?
So I'm the CEO of Visit Casper. And I would say that as I've gotten further into this, or I've been here at 3.5 years now, I think what my role started as was getting some stability in the organization and the marketing and maybe some of the tactical things or the traditional things that are tourism related. I will say, and I think you're going to hear this from a lot of people, my role has evolved to be more of our chief advocacy officer. So we're a destination just like many that constantly have to beat the drum and fight the good fight of tourism funding and what the political landscape looks like. So I would say today it's probably advocacy more than anything, but it's truly like setting the tone for the work that we do and recruiting supporting characters and some amazing partners to help further our mission and continue to create those jobs and those tax revenues. So a collaborator as well. So I think about all of the diverse stakeholders we serve as our organization, and specifically probably in this role. And it's recruiting board members that can help drive things forward and staff who can buy in and want to buy into a vision of what we're doing here. So let's just call it a chief collaborator and an advocacy officer. How's that?
Yeah. Sounds like a lot falls under the umbrella, right? And I'm glad that you're focused on the advocacy role, because it's such a critical role. And if you're trying to get so many different stakeholders and organizations to work together, that role is so critical. And so, yeah, anyway, good to hear that's what you're doing. I think, we've had so many different, we're a little early in the podcast. We've had several different types of guests on the podcast. Just 2 weeks ago, we were on with Matt Baroud from the State of Idaho Tourism Office. And it's kind of fun to get the dichotomy of the different types of destinations and roles within destinations that we've had here on the podcast. And I'd say Casper, Wyoming, compared to a state level tourism office, has a completely different set of challenges, completely different set of issues that you guys have to work through. But you also have a very unique destination. And so I would love to have you talk a little bit about Casper in and of itself and what makes it unique from other destinations and some of the challenges that maybe you guys have to deal with.
So one of the things, and this might be on a bigger level from if we get into currently Wyoming as a tourism destination, but I would say one of the unique things, and we hear this consistently about Casper, we are very rich in pioneer history. So Casper is where the Mormon, the Oregon, the Pony Express Trail, and the California all converge. So our community has a rich history of trails, but we've also really brought that forward in the way that people can move around our city. Certainly opportunity still to grow in that, but we're very tied to that pioneer history and that pioneer spirit. The other thing that we hear really consistently is you can be in my office downtown and up on Casper Mountain, no joke, in 15 minutes. Like, you don't have to drive an hour to go ski downhill. You don't have to, sit in traffic on I-70 in Colorado. God love everybody from Colorado who's listening to this, but it's super accessible, extraordinary access to outdoor recreation. So I would say those are a couple things that make Casper really unique.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. And what an interesting variety there. You've got the Pioneer Trail, and then you've got the downtown to mountain in 15 minutes. That's a wide variety of things that you guys need to promote. Tell me, I know that you guys recently decided to rebrand, and that's kind of where I'd like to focus today, because it's no small decision to rebrand, right? And it's obviously something that I'm sure that you and your office didn't take lightly. So what led to that decision, and what does that process look like for you guys?
Well, I wish I had a short answer for you. So I want to set this up with a quick background story about where we are and where we are with a positioning statement. So you guys might remember this, but maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, there was an industry trend to build a community brand that everyone could own a piece of. So your downtown development would have a piece, your city, potentially your county, your visitors bureau, all of those people came together to say, let's work together to build a community brand. And at the time, Casper was no different, and brought in some outside experts and got a really great brand promise and built a lot of collaboration, invested a whole lot of time and money. So the research behind the brand that came out of that was really first class, super incredible. We still reference that brand promise today. But the execution of what that was, so the creative that came out of that, I don't know any other way to say it. The creative fell short. And it wasn't because the logo wasn't pretty, but it was, can we just speak frankly on this? I'm not sure who's going to listen to this, but I hope they can actually learn something from this.
We would definitely prefer it. Yeah, we want people to be able to kind of take this and action on it. So this is great if you'll be frank here.
So we're Casper, Wyoming when we go sell Casper to the world. Like we go to shows and sometimes people are like, I don't even know where Yellowstone is, right? So if you go to sell group travel, or there's meeting planners on the East Coast that are like, where are you, right? So we alone to go into somewhere selling Casper is like, we've got to use the destination name. So what came out of our first branding process was this idea called Wyo City. So Casper being Wyoming's city. Well, it's great, and the city adopted it, and this office bought off on it, and everybody invested in the letterhead and the stickers and the vehicle wraps and all of that. But as we got further into this, and I know that you're going to ask me about what scares me about a rebrand, we were out in the market with this, and people are like, what? I mean, if you don't know where Casper is, now I'm adding another layer on this of Wyo City or Wyocity, and it got to be a real challenge for us. So that was the big investment in a rebrand several years ago. So when I got here and it's falling apart and it's hard to execute on, and the ownership, as people turn over in their positions, like a city manager leaves or a CEO of a bureau leaves, there's less buy-in because you have new people at the table, right? So we honestly, where we've been up until this point, and this leads me to answer your question, we have just been in the last few years in a place of trying to find some stability for our brand of Casper. So how do you just visit Casper and not, like, how do we just go back to that and build some authority again and just some stability for either visitors or for our community? So that's where we've been for the last few years. And to answer your question about what you asked me, we're not rebranding from Visit Casper, but we're in search of a positioning statement that helps us explain who we really are. And it would be so easy to be a vanilla destination. This would be really easy to say we have awesome fishing and a mountain and all of these things. We have history. We have, like, you can get lost in that, and your destination can get lost in that. So our decision to work towards a positioning statement was, how do we really communicate in a succinct way what we are?
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, it sounds like it was, for you, it sounds like maybe it was a little bit more cut and dry. We have a lot of destinations that we talk to that really struggle with that decision. And really, it's mostly around the timing of when to rebrand and how they should think about that. Any advice? I mean, for you and your office, maybe it was a little bit different, but any advice for other destinations that are out there that are thinking about a rebrand and whether it's the right decision or specifically even the right time? What would you say to them?
Well, I'm probably not the person to ask, only because we had our backs against the wall on that. I mean, when you're out and you realize it's not translating, like we've got to figure something out. So the stability was the first piece. And for us, we have, like, it's a new day. There's a renaissance happening in Casper. Our downtown is vibrant, and it feels like, and I hope somebody can relate to this, the soul of this place. And that's what we do. We all market places and what our places stand for. And the soul of this place keeps trying to say something to us. Like, it's in there, and we just haven't found the words to share what that is. So I don't know if there's a perfect time to keep peeling back the layers of the onion, but that's really where we've been. And I think your board has to be ready. I think your team has to be ready. I think the community is going to go where you go because you're going to go anyway. But I feel like your stakeholder groups have to be ready and not fatigued around, my gosh, we've changed a brand every year for the last 10 years, right?
Yeah. Makes sense. In that vein of knowing when it's time to rebrand, I think one of the biggest challenges that I've seen, I've been in a lot of meetings with different tourism bureaus, and I could probably tell you the persona of the 4 different types of people that are in those meetings, right? Like, you've got a couple of people that, when they say a couple things, everybody's like, oh no, what's about to come out of their mouth, right? And then you've got a couple people that are kind of the more savvy and kind of up to speed on certain things, and you've got several different personalities, it's hard because they all see things through a different lens, right? And so my question to you is, how do you go to all of those different stakeholders and talk about, because it's a major decision, right? And you talked about it. You said it sounded like Wyocity, right? Instead of Wyo City, which was the intended sound. But I guarantee you there was people within the destination, stakeholders within the destination, that loved that brand message, right? So how did you get everybody on board?
Get everybody on board with making the shift?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I was new to the organization and didn't know any better, right? So I think that creates an opportunity when you have turnover in leadership in the places or the organizations who were involved in driving that. So I think that's a piece of it. But honestly, so it could be Wyocity or Wyoming, Wyo City. But I think I didn't have to. I wish I could give you something sexier than this. We didn't have to do a lot because you could see it. Like you could see that, like the translation was off and the execution wasn't working and we weren't connecting in a message way. So, I mean, it could come through in statistics. It could come through with execution. It could come through with feedback, like whatever the data was that we were able to collect and share at that time. I mean, in our situation, guys, it was just obvious. It just was. So I didn't have like this magic thing where I had to go sell the board on anything. I will say, if anything, and if anybody's listening to this about this particular section, like your board gets fatigue in some of this stuff. They don't want to hear that you want a new logo. They don't want to hear that you want to switch colors. They don't want to hear that I don't want to be Visit Casper anymore. I want to be Destination Casper. They get tired, right? So I think for them, they were like, listen, we've changed brands a lot in the last 10 years. And obviously this last execution, we invested a lot of time, a lot of money. It's falling a little short for us. How do we just now start to, I keep saying stabilize because that's truly the only word I can use, and then go forward.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It sounds like it's an interesting experience that you went through. I feel like a lot of the destinations that we speak to about a rebrand, for you and your destinations, it sounds like it might have been a bit more obvious and maybe it was time for a change. And all of the stakeholders involved, it sounds like they were really prepared and ready for that. A lot of folks that we talk to, a rebrand is really scary because it's a departure from what everyone has known, what everyone has, at some point embraced and loved, and it worked in some way, shape, or form. And now all of a sudden you come to the table and you say, hey, I kind of want to mix things up a little bit. I want to rebrand. I want to go a different direction than what we're all used to. Did any of that keep you up at night? Did any of that, scare you? What was that experience like, or was it more cut and dry for you?
So for us, it was cut and dried, but I think I've got a great story to share with you. And I don't want to speak out of turn on this, so I'll kind of keep my comments. This is my personal opinion. But for 10 years, the state of Wyoming had Forever West, and it was beloved. It was the steamboat, and it was a certain script that, like the type of font that made you just feel something. And it was very Western, and it was a very regional brand. And it, like, our government officials had bought in, and our locals loved it, and international audiences, you revered it. Like, Wyoming had a brand, right? And 10 years later, the Office of Tourism makes a decision. They make a move on agencies. They want to try to go from a regional footprint to a national footprint. And what came out of that was That's Why. And people were heartbroken. They love That's Why, right? That's WY. But they were like, wow, Forever West. Like there was such a nostalgia and a connection to that brand. So it took a year for the industry, I think, to say, like, we had, like, the numbers are there to show that it was the right move, right? So when you watch the metrics, it's so true. So that's probably a better example of what you're asking me than what I have at Casper. And I know if you guys ever want to connect with the Office of Tourism, get the real legit story, I'd be happy to get you in touch. But that's a better of,
we may have to follow up on that.
That was not an easy decision for anyone, I'm sure. I mean, seriously, 10 years and the 10 years of an agency and a brand that worked and all of it. And it was time. And I'm sure that was really terrifying.
Interesting. We'll have to dig a little deeper on that in another episode. You obviously went through a process as you were trying to decide where to go with your brand. And it sounds like you guys landed on creating that positioning statement that really makes you different. What does that process look like for you guys, though? Who's on your decision-making committee? What stakeholders are involved? And I'd even love to hear what does the process look like from here? You selected a partner. You guys are working now on this new positioning. What does that look like from here? Where do you go from here?
So we had, obviously our marketing manager was involved in this and I was as well. And then we also have a very active marketing committee at the board level. So this was a big decision, and it wasn't necessarily a financially enormous decision for us. It wasn't like it was going to be half of our annual budget. But we like to walk really closely on things like this with the board, because for me, in any issue of what we're dealing with the Bureau, it's super important to have buy-in, especially at a subcommittee level before it goes to the full board, so that they understood why we want to do it. They got to contribute to what they would hope that the outcome would be. So for us, it's multiple layers, so that I don't ever want to make a decision as a CEO and then show up with a positioning statement, because everybody's a marketer, right? So everybody has an opinion on what that should look like. I never want to show up at a board and say, here we go, here's what we just spent money on. And they're like, that's a dud, or that's a turd, or whatever. So, so all the way through, and even now, when we have selected the agency and they have been here, we've had board involvement the whole way. So it's just important to us that there's no disconnect of, hey, staff's going to do this and the board sees this. It's important to me that we're a team in this approach, specifically in this area.
I like it. It's all about that alignment, right? I like that. Yeah, I like that a lot. As far as, speaking of alignment, if you look at some of the challenges that the state of Wyoming faces as it relates to tourism, what do you kind of see there? What are some of the biggest challenges that Wyoming is facing? And does any of that trickle down to Casper? And, what are there any challenges that are shared at the state level, when compared to your destination? And what does that look like?
That's a great question. And I want everybody listening to make sure that they know I'm the CEO of Casper. So what I say about the state of Wyoming is my own personal opinion. So I don't want to step on anybody's toes. So two things come to mind for me. The first is, and there is a perception of the state of Wyoming and what we have and what you'll experience here. And sometimes that perception is amazing, like wide open spaces and our national park and our monuments and all like the history and what Wyoming really is. But then we also are up against a perception of Wyoming of, do you have indoor plumbing? Do you still ride horses? Like, do 12 people live in your town? So I would say from a destination or place marketing perspective, it can go both ways. So I think sometimes we have to overcome what someone's perception of Wyoming would be to start. But the other, and this is going to be really common, you'll hear this across the board, and I mentioned it earlier, funding for the Office of Tourism and for our local bureaus and the political landscape. Like there's a lot about weaponization of travel and advocacy work and state offices being defunded, and we go to our voters every 4 years. So we just passed a vote by 77% in November. They generously have agreed to continue to help fund tourism locally for the next 4 years. But every 4 years you wonder if that could go either way. So I would say it's the two that are on my mind is the funding and political landscape always, and it will continue to be. And then also, how do we continually overcome maybe a negative perception of Wyoming?
Got it. Does the state of Wyoming have a co-op program where, small destinations like yours are able to apply for matching funds? I know in the state of Utah, we've got a co-op program. Does Wyoming have the same type of program, or is that, what does that support from the state look like?
Yep, they have a robust co-op program. So everything from print to digital to inserts and papers and about every platform. I know that we're exploring research co-ops right now and destination development co-op. So they're actually in communication through Destinations International to say, how do we help the destinations in Wyoming go through that assessment so that if there's development, it's in alignment with what could grow the visitor economy. So it runs the gamut, but yeah, they're amazing partners in the co-op space.
Awesome. How have you guys been able to leverage those programs to benefit Casper?
Our biggest is probably they do an incredible job on their visitors guide, and the distribution is just out of sight. So we do a lot of print with them. We also we do some of their newspaper inserts. We do like SEM co-ops. Their email programs are really great through their newsletters, their opt-ins, things like that. So we don't do everything that we have with them. We're an office that also is split about 50-50 sales and marketing. So we don't get to do everything that they offer, but there's certainly destinations who do take them up on everything.
It makes a lot of sense. We one of the questions that we like to ask our guests too, if you were to look into a crystal ball and kind of try to predict the future based off of what you're seeing, any predictions in terms of what the future of tourism marketing could look like next, 5, 10, 15 years from now? What are you seeing?
So I think it'd be really easy for me to say what everybody's talking about, like authentic, hyper local. But two things that are really on my mind right now in this space. I was just at the CEO summit in Asheville for Destinations International, and they said there was a statistic that 1 in 5 people abort their travel planning because they're overwhelmed. So we better figure out a way to make
Oh, wow.
planning simple, or more simple than it is today. If we're overwhelming 20% of people who are going to travel, we got to figure that out. And then also we've got to be more than the marketing game. We've got to be in the development game. Like, we have to help drive the conversations that create assets that people will come for. So it's cool to market and bring people, and we're going to market what we have, but if we've really better get strategic in that development space.
Got it. And what is we talked about the future of marketing and tourism. What is your vision for Casper? You're the CEO of Casper, and obviously you have a plan. Where are you guys going? What do you see the future of Casper to be?
From a tourism perspective, is that what you're asking?
Kind of more in general, just as an office, what are your big rocks that you guys are trying to overcome? What are your major objectives?
I think one is stability in our economy. So I always want tourism to be a very consistent employer in our market. So again, I mentioned that we're very cyclical with energy. So I think if we're working really hard to make sure that we're a backfill or a stability anchor in our local economy, then we're doing our jobs. I think for me, it's how do you, and we're winning in the PR space. It's how do you use new platforms or creative platforms or things that we haven't pursued before to really drive awareness for this destination and then drive conversion. So we've stayed in the traditional vein for a very long time of dollars for ads. And we're really just taking a look at storytelling and content. And we've launched a visiting friends and family brand and really aggressive on the PR front right now. So I think it's all of those things, but I don't know if Casper has gotten the limelight it's deserved for what it has. And I feel like I won't rest until that's done. How's that?
That's great. Yep. That's a great goal to have. Last question for you, Brooke, is there anything that we haven't asked you that you feel like your answer could benefit our listenership?
Part of me just wants to say you're not alone. You're not alone. Like this, like it's so worth it. But I think sometimes we are so busy and we're understaffed and we're overwhelmed and we're problem solvers. I mean, the communities that we're in look to us to help solve problems, and I love to do it. But I would say sometimes we lose sight of our why, and that's why for me every day I think if I'm doing my job, people have jobs. So hold on to your why for dear life, and you're doing good work. And I think everybody who's in a seat like mine feels really lucky to have their jobs. It's a great industry to be in.
Totally. Yeah, we share your sentiment. We love being in tourism, and we love being able to chat with people like you. I really appreciate you joining us today, Brooke. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, this has been the Destination Marketing Podcast with Adam Stoker and Jordan Barker, along with our guest, Brook Kaufman. Want to invite everybody, while I have the chance, to join our LinkedIn group as well. It's Destination Marketers on LinkedIn. If you search that, you can apply to join the group, and we'd love to have you join the community that is sharing experiences and expertise and helping people continue to get better in tourism marketing, where we can all grow as a whole. So thanks for joining us, everybody, and we look forward to talking to you soon.